That is one of the toughest conversations that I have had, to be honest, because I think that, it is valid for people to be like, wow, this is really uncomfortable to me. And it's okay for them to acknowledge that, right?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this brand new installment of the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. I am your wonderful, awesome, sexy host, Nick Comstock, and I am so glad that you guys have joined me today on this Tuesday. I have a great guest as always. I love having guests because I just love having conversation. But before we get to her, she's awesome. I just met her and we're already besties. Before we get to her, though, I want to give some real quick show notes. As you guys know, I came out with a book along with 11 other authors back in April called Trailblazing and Transforming Entrepreneurial Stories of People with Disabilities. You can get that on Amazon, either in Kindle or in paperback. It is in my link tree. Go check it out. Like I always say, you don't have to have a Kindle to get the book. You just need the Kindle app. Download it on your phone, and then you can get it from there. Also, to keep me coming to you each and every week, um, please go to my GoFundMe link if you wouldn't mind. Right now it says Van Fundraiser. I am working on changing that so we can include paying for the podcast and any other public speaking ventures that may come my way in the near future. So if you feel so inclined, please donate to my GoFundMe, which is also in my link tree. And if you want to come on the show or you just have a comment, you can email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com. Now we got all those pesky show notes out of the way. You guys, I'm so excited because not only do I have a caregiver on the program with me today, I have a caregiver who has been in all capacities of caregiving. So she's been a director, she's been in management, she's been in the hellhole known as the scheduling office. She's been everywhere. And you know what? It's really a good day because it's 5 o'clock somewhere and she's got a beer. She's got a beer.
Cheers.
Hold up the beer, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Yes, the beer. So, you know, so please help me welcome Tiffany Bowen, who we call Tiff. So, Tiff. Hi, Tiff. How are
Yay.
you?
Hi, Nick. I am doing great. Although I feel like you should have also added sexy when you were describing me as well. Just saying. It's fine.
Okay, well, she is a sexy caregiver. Then
Yes. Let's go for that. I love it.
the sexiest one in Columbus, Ohio.
You know what? That's bold. That's a bold claim, but I will take it. I will take
Well,
it.
notice I didn't say the entire state because I've seen some caregivers that are pretty sexy. So I'm
I
just gonna
mean, I'm just proud that you said Columbus, Ohio. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that with me. So
get hoping, and I'm sure that your wife would disagree. She would probably say that she's the sexiest. So,
she might fight me for it, but I think I would win ultimately. So I'm just
well, you're on my show, and I'm trying to, become besties with you even more and get a free meal. So, yes, you are. Um,
yeah.
so, anyway, it's so cool to have you.
Yes, I'm so excited. I just knew that we were gonna have such good conversations, and I'm just really excited, like to talk about anything and everything.
Yeah. So, Tiffany, why don't you? I'll go back and forth calling you Tiff and Tiffany and
Sure.
all that stuff. So, I hope you don't mind. You can go back and forth and call me Nick, sexy Nick, whatever.
Sexy Nick has a nice ring to it. So yeah, we could do that.
Yes. Yes. If you don't like to talk about sex a lot, this episode may not be for you because we're going to talk about it a lot today.
We are. We are. Yeah, maybe put the parental advisory on the
Yes.
beginning of this one.
Yes, we probably should do that. Maybe not. Maybe we'll just surprise people.
We all got to talk about it. It's cool.
Yeah. So, Tiffany, why don't you tell everyone on the Nick Speaks audience, in the Nick Speaks audience, a little bit about yourself and how you came to be in this field, and then we will get into some questions and maybe crack open a couple more beers in between.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Go ahead.
So I am from Central Ohio, born and raised in Delaware, actually. But in the last 7 years, I've been a resident of Columbus. Love Columbus, by the way. It's one of my favorite cities that I've ever lived in. I have done a lot prior to being in this field. I did a lot of retail. So I was a tech geek. I worked at Radio Shack, which is really sad that they're not in business anymore.
Yeah.
I worked at Best Buy. I worked at Apple. And I did some management in those places. So I had a lot of management experience. And about 15 years ago, I found myself without a job. And I was like, well, what the heck am I going to do now? And I was kind of looking for something different, didn't know what I was looking for. And I did not know that this field existed. I didn't, I didn't know somebody personally with a disability. I hadn't really been exposed to that all that much, except for like in school. And so I like to say that I like randomly tripped and fell into the DSP job. It was just totally random, and I was like, you know what? This sounds like something I can do. It sounds like something that might be fun. It's different. So I was like, I'll do this job. It'll get me through college, and then I can pursue what I want to pursue. By the way, I went to college at OSU for psychology. But as I started being a DSP, I quickly found that this is something I really love to do. I just love every aspect of it. I love that I get to hang out with people that I find joy being with. They make me happy. I make them happy. At least I try to most days. And so it turned into a career path for me. And like you said at the beginning, I have done a lot of different roles. So I started as a DSP. I moved up. I've worked as like a case manager. I've worked in day programs. I became a director, all the way up to an executive director. And I would say that my strength is in training people to be better DSPs. When I say better DSPs, I don't mean that they are not good now, although we both know that there are some who probably aren't that great. But it's more so thinking about things in ways that DSPs don't always think about things. And we'll get into a lot of that, I'm sure. But that's where I'm at now. I stepped away from my executive director position so that I could start my own business where I'm currently offering coaching. I do like coaching sessions with people one on one. I also work with provider agencies to provide different trainings, provide classes, and just give them input on how they can improve their agencies across a broad range of topics. And then I
Yeah.
am still doing DSP work as well. So.
That's awesome. You said just a moment ago that you were a case manager. Were you ever a case manager for a county board?
I was not. The case managing I did was more so over like multiple houses in different counties.
Okay.
But yeah, I did not venture into the county board world for a couple reasons, but it just really wasn't my gig, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been a house manager at a lot of different places, a lot of different houses and stuff. So what were some of the things, I don't know, maybe this is getting into it a little too early, but what were some of the things that you saw when you weren't in power, such as like a director, where you could really make change, where you said, if I ever get a chance to be in power and I can make real change, I will not do this to my staff.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that one of the first things that I noticed as a DSP is that sometimes leadership treats DSPs as if they are puzzle pieces to be plugged into a schedule.
Yeah,
Okay, I have a body here. This person, I'm just going to plug them in here because I need to. And in a lot of ways, I get why they feel that way, especially after we went through COVID, and it was like so short-staffed. It was like, where do we put people? But there's a lot of missed opportunity in talking to DSPs and helping them understand that, like, they play one of the biggest roles in the people we serve in their lives. As a DSP, when I walk onto a shift for the day, whether it's 8 hours, 12 hours, whatever, I might be the only person that that person sees today,
yeah,
you know? And if I walk in and I'm just like, cool, I'm coming in and I'm just here to make sure that the bare minimum gets met and I'm good, well, then I really have done a disservice to the person that I'm serving. But I think that helping DSPs understand their value and saying, hey, like, you are a huge factor in whether somebody's going to have a good day or a bad one.
right.
Like,
Well,
that's a lot of power.
yeah, it is. And I find it so interesting that you said that you referred to them, that you feel leadership refers to them as puzzle pieces. And that's actually perfect for you to say that. Because when a direct support professional, there goes the beer.
Yes.
Take a
Had to
drink.
start
Um, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
it.
It
Yes,
ain't
it is.
cracked open, people. I know it's early Tuesday morning, but hey, whatever. Um, I think it's so interesting that you said about the puzzle piece, because if caregivers are treated like that, this is where I need them, this is all they have to do. The caregiver is going to treat the client the exact same way. They
Hmm.
look at the they look at the ISP as a puzzle piece,
Yeah.
and they say, as long as everything is done in this ISP, I'm good.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if they had a meaningful conversation with them or not. It doesn't matter if they made them their favorite food. It doesn't matter if they took the client's issues and made it their own, because
Hmm.
you know they were just treated like a puzzle piece. So that's obviously what they want the client to be treated like. Do your job, do the bare minimum, don't go above and beyond, because guess what? We as leaders aren't. So why should we
Yeah.
expect our staff to? And that really bothers me, because the leadership that doesn't go above and beyond are usually the leadership that expects the most from their staff.
Hmm.
But then the staff get treated like shit from uh their leadership. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's so true. And like it really is. Like it's almost like you said with the ISP, it's like these check boxes, right? Okay, done, 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 done. And there's not enough meaning behind it. And like I don't know how much you've looked at documentation, Nick, but like as a leader, when I would go in and look at documentation and we always have to essentially write about somebody's day and what they did. And there would be so many times where you would see something like Nick came home, he got changed, he had dinner, he took his meds, he went to bed, it was a good day. And it's like, that doesn't tell me anything about Nick's day because those are things that Nick would do anyways,
Yeah.
regardless, you know? And so it's like, what happened in between all that? Like, what were you doing in between all of that?
Well, I guess the next question I have for you as far as that, because I've never thought of this until now, like, how specific does the state want somebody to be when they're saying an individual did this? Because, for example, I don't want somebody to say, Nick had romantic time with, so and so.
Yeah.
So there's parts that I want to be kept private. Now, if we do something fun, like go to the movies or something, I'm cool with that. So where's the boundary, and how can we, tell the state, hey, this is what we did with the money that we're allotted and the time that he has, and he really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that like in terms of the state, compliance really just says, hey, you just gotta cover like the basics of that ISP, right?
Yeah.
Like, did we
Okay,
do the
hold on just
things?
one second. Hold on just one second. I got to turn my air on. I'm sweating.
Oh, no, you're fine. It's hot.
Hold on. Hold on. Hey, Edwin. Hey, Edwin. Can you turn on my air, please? I'm in the middle of recording and I'm really sweating.
That's because we're asking the tough questions early.
Well, it's not only that, it's just that I sit and I literally sweat in my room
Yeah.
just by sitting here. I don't know. Okay. So I will tell him to edit after the word. What did I say? Hold on a second. Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
what I said. Okay. So how do we make sure, Tiffany, that we are doing what the state wants you and wants more detail, and how much detail is too much detail?
Yeah, I think that like that's a tricky question, right? Because I've always trained people like it doesn't need to be a book. We don't need a novel about what happened today, but we also need more than just like four sentences about the bare minimum that you did. And so I always try to think of like what made the day unique. You know, maybe it was like Nick came home and he had a conversation with me about wanting to upgrade the microphones in his studio for podcast recording. Or, Joe, I took Joe to church this morning and he commented that he really enjoyed the message and he was going to write in his journal about what he learned at church today. So it's like, what are the things that make somebody's day unique?
Yeah.
You know, now, of course, within boundaries, like you said, there's really no need for me to be like, hey, Nick was hanging out with somebody and I think that they got a little bit inappropriate. I don't need to share things like that. That's fine. But yeah, I just try to think about those things. What makes the day different? What makes the day different from woke up, took a shower, ate breakfast, took meds, had their day, went to bed. You know what I mean?
Yep. And who sees that type of report anyway? Is it the state or is it the agency?
So it's both. The agency sees those on a regular basis. And the importance of that, I think, is because ISPs, they're supposed to be living documents, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not just supposed to be something that you meet once a year about and you go, okay, everything looks good, keep it the same, which unfortunately I've seen happen. But we need the information because we need to be able to say, well, hey, this doesn't seem like it's working in this person's ISP.
Right.
Or, maybe we need to add this to this person's ISP because now they've expressed interest in it a few times. The state does look at it as well when, going through audits and things like that. Also, notes like that can be really important, like when somebody gets really sick or maybe they go to the hospital. A lot of times, county boards will be like, hey, can you just send us the last 3 days of your notes so that we can look and see if there were any signs that that person was not feeling well? So
Right.
that could be something else to put in your notes, like, hey, Nick said he was really tired and he didn't want to eat dinner. He just wanted to go to bed. And
Yeah.
so then we can start to look
Believe
at
it or
those.
not, if I do that, I'm really sick.
I was gonna say, and that's
I love to eat. So,
right.
yeah.
Like if my notes, if somebody ever took notes on me and it was like, Tiff said she wasn't hungry and wanted to skip a meal, I'd be like, somebody needs to look into this because there is something wrong. But that's the kind of stuff, and that's the kind of stuff that it really helps to have those kind of narratives that are outside of the check boxes of somebody's ISP.
I'm going to say something else, and then I'm going to go back to what we were talking about because
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, I had my primary caregiver who has also turned into my brother. We're basically family now. I had my primary caregiver, Darius, on a couple weeks ago, and your story is very similar to his because he was like, I was just planning to, do this through college, and then I fell in love with it,
Yeah.
and you are the same way, and I love that
Yeah.
because if you love this job, especially this job, you're not it'll be a long time before you get burnt out. You might have some stressful days, but if and there's no you might have you will,
You
but
will.
it'll be a long time before you're like, I'm ready to throw in the towel if you really love it.
Yes.
One of the things that I want to get back to you and talk on this ISP about. And we didn't plan to go in this direction, but this is why I love podcasting. This is why I love my interview freestyle. Because, okay, say if somebody who's really active like me, they're in the
Mhm.
paperwork all the time and the caregiver's actually expressing what they're actually doing with their client, saying, like, we went to the movies today, we went to the mall today, and then after that we went ice skating, and then after that we went out for ice cream, and we did the if the state looks at are they able to look at that and say that's not what we're paying for? Why are they doing all this? You
I
know,
sup Yeah, I suppose that they could. But I think honestly, the more information you have about what you've done with somebody, the better it's gonna be. Um, Especially when you get into things like outcomes, right?
yeah,
Which we know that the last few years, the state has really pushed outcomes as being an important part of the ISP. Um, and I just want to say that I really can't stand that they call it outcomes, because I would call it a personal goal. I
yeah.
wouldn't say that I have outcomes. I would say I have goals, but that's a topic for another day.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, no, I mean, language is very important.
it
And,
is.
they're always talking about person centered language. And so I agree with you. I mean, what's the outcome of going and getting ice cream? Well, it digests, and
Yeah.
we hope we're not too lactose intolerant. But that language, that
Yep.
language just does not make sense. I
It
mean,
doesn't. It sounds very, I don't know, it just sounds very non-people-y.
yeah,
Like, it's like outcomes to me are like, I don't know, I think of like the outcome of a problem or like the outcome of an experiment. I don't really think about that like a goal,
I
you
think of
know?
the word outcome as did we come to a solution
Hmm.
get to a better outcome. So
Yeah.
yeah, DODD, if you're listening, which I know several of you do, change the language on that because it's really, really weird. And it's really, really wordy. The reason I asked you that about, can the state come back and say this is not what we're paying for, is because to give people a little bit of an idea of how the system works here in Ohio, the the IO waiver is made up of 9 ranges,
Mhm.
and the top range means that you get uh $500,000, or I've been told that there really is no cap once you're at that top range. I was actually told that by the man who wrote the waiver. The counties like to say, oh, $500,000 is the top range, but he was like, no, I developed this program. There really is no, there
Yeah.
really is no cap once you get to that um, top nine, the ninth funding range. And the reason why I bring this up, Tiffany, is because I've been told often, especially since I moved to Columbus, just because I've been approved for $500,000 a year. Let's just say that, since a lot of counties want to go off of that top funding range, just because I've been approved for $500,000 a year does not mean that we should spend $500,000 a year. And we have to be so careful as to what we do. And we have to be fiscally responsible. This is what annoys me. And I'm going to let you respond in a second. This is what annoys me. All of a sudden, these state governments are so enamored with being fiscally responsible when it
Mhm.
comes to the services of people with disabilities. But when it comes to anything else, we can spend money on whatever. But
Yeah.
as far as Medicaid, SNAP, everything else, we have to be, I shouldn't say everything else. I should say social programs like Medicaid, SNAP, and all the other social programs. We have to be fiscally responsible. And then the veterans and the disabled, I feel like, get short shrift.
Yeah.
So, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I really like, I think there's a couple things that I think about based on what you've said. And the one thing I think about is a, if you've done a level of care with somebody, an ODDP, and you've determined their budget, that's their budget, right? Like, why are we like, okay, your budget is $500,000, but I'm going to see if I can get you taken care of in two. And that to me feels like we're not really doing everything that we can to
Yeah,
provide the best care for somebody,
yeah,
right? Like if that's the budget, spend it. If that's the budget. If you're like, you know what, we really shouldn't be spending $500,000 because we don't have that amount of money, we should be spending more like 300,000, then quit making budgets be $500,000.
and quit approving us for that range. And then we'll say if we approve you for a lower range, but you need more, we'll just ask the state for more money.
Yeah.
No, that's not the way this should go. Either I'm approved for that range, and by the answers that I've given, or the client or the parent, they're approved for that range because the answers show that they need that range of funding, or they're not. And we're not in a, well, we have to be fiscally responsible. I hear that way too much. But, you know, no, let's be honest. How many people in America that run these government programs are fiscally responsible with their own checkbook?
Most of them are not.
Yeah. So please, for real.
Yeah.
Honestly, you case managers are taxpayers.
Mhm.
So if you look at the budget that's being spent, and if you see that your individual is being cared for, you should look and be like, hot damn, my tax dollars went so that somebody could go on a vacation using the waiver funding, which my tax dollars goes into. That's making me happy
Yep.
because we're not my individual's not sitting in front of four walls ready to pull their hair out, So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think the question that you really have to ask um, for all of this, we unfortunately, Medicaid dollars are dependent on how our government feels about.
Yeah.
big budgets. We know that there's been a huge cut to Medicaid recently, and we don't know what that's going to look like yet.
Yeah.
But the folks who are making the decision about Medicaid dollars, how many of them actually know what it is to care for somebody with a disability?
Yeah.
How many of them have any personal experience with that? And so it's like DODD, I'm like, your responsibility is to make sure that these politicians understand that on like a molecular level. You have to turn into a salesperson and you have to sell what it is that you're trying to do. And so DODD's got to go all out and sell what it is that they're trying to do for folks so that people can fully understand before they're making decisions about budgets.
Absolutely. And I want to say this to every government representative and every congressman, too, especially here in the state of Ohio. You know, I have been to every DD day that we've had every year since I've been in Columbus for 10 years. I've been to every one of them. And do you want to know how many times I hear, I've told my case managers in the past, yeah, I'm going down for DD Awareness Day. Oh, what's that? That's today?
Yeah, I imagine you hear that all the time.
Like, especially congressmen, listen to me. The DD day is always the first Wednesday in March or the first Tuesday or whatever. That
Hmm.
should automatically be put on your calendar every year, not just for the meetings with your constituents, but for the whole day. So you hear the speakers, you see the families, you know what these constituents go through
Yeah,
because it wasn't just the able bodied people that voted for you.
correct.
And I heard something said last year by somebody at DD Day, and they said when you go in to talk to your senators, you know, ask them to get them to know, uh, to get them to care about your situation. Ask them what their favorite sandwiches are. Ask them what their favorite restaurant is. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, they should already care about my situation because they weren't just running to get the votes of able bodied people.
Yeah.
I only have 15 minutes with this person. I'm not going to spend 3 to 5 minutes trying to figure out what their favorite sandwich is just so I can butter them up.
Yeah. That's, I think that that hits on a topic that you and I discussed before about we talk about this whole self-advocacy thing, right? And people
Yeah,
advocating for themselves, but you're not expected to advocate for yourself if you're going to like make people uncomfortable.
mm-hmm.
And I think you have to make politicians uncomfortable. I think that, like you said, I've got 15 minutes to talk to this person who controls so much of my life. I'm going to be like, hey, dude, like this is something I deal with every day. Here's how it could be better.
Yeah,
And being able to share bits and pieces of your story, because again, most politicians, they don't have experience with somebody who has a disability.
they don't.
They have no idea what that looks like. So they're really creating policies and things for people who are able-bodied, like you said, because they don't know people who are not.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I'm not gonna ask somebody what their favorite sandwich is. I'm gonna say, hey, listen, you voted on the budget, and here's some of the consequences from when you voted on this budget. Here's what that looks like for me personally.
yeah, yeah. And and I don't know if we can fix it to actually say to them when you go to these meetings to give everybody a 15-minute time frame is
Mhm.
ridiculous because then you're expecting them, you're not going to get to the crux of the issue. within that 15 minutes. So I think there needs to be something else changed into that direction. And as far as self advocacy, I just said this on a TikTok the other day, because I was advocating for someone else in Connecticut. They had a really horrible story, and I came out and I did a video on it. If you don't follow me on TikTok, follow me at Nicolas Comstock. But I said, one of the things that states like to say is that we love our self advocates. Yeah, you love us as long as we're continuing to advocate on your
Mhm.
script that you would like us to continue on.
Yeah.
But once we
Yeah.
start advocating for us and going against the grain, and that might make you spend a little bit more money as a state, you don't want to hear about it.
Yeah. I mean, what if self-advocating means that I'm pissed off at something DODD's doing,
Yeah,
you know? And I think that there's a little bit of fear and there's a little bit of people feeling like, oh, because DODD maybe put me in this place or maybe DODD gave me this opportunity, that there is a less likelihood to speak up and go, hey, the way you guys are doing this is kind of messed up.
yeah, yeah. And I love the folks at DODD, and I know you do too.
I do.
This is why we do. This is why I do this program, to bring situations that people like myself struggle with on a day-to-day basis. That's why the tagline of this program at the beginning of it is speak up, speak out, and speak loud. And I say it at the end of it too: speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled most, because we are not talking about it. I mean, we're doing a lot of talking about it, but there's not a lot of good outcomes. See, that's the appropriate way to use outcomes.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
not a lot of good outcomes. We keep bitching about how little Social Security gets paid. We keep bitching about how bad Medicaid is, but we don't come to the table with an outcome to say, this is how we can make it better.
Hmm.
And so, yeah. And I want to say this too. I know there's a lot of people not a fan of the current administration. You're not a fan of the current administration. But what I need my audience to hear is that they don't really care. They're dealing with people in Russia and Ukraine. What you really need to focus on is your local state officials.
Yep.
You really need to focus on your local state officials. And then if it gets to the point of federal, maybe by the time you've made so much noise, federal will hear your voice. But federal doesn't hear your voice half the time because you don't even talk to local officials.
Yeah. That's where it's at, right? Like, regardless of what you think about who the president of the United States is, he doesn't really have a whole lot of control over how your funding is happening, how budgeting is happening. That is mostly at the state level. And a lot of people, they couldn't even tell you who their state representatives are. They don't even know.
Right. I've got to sit here and be honest. I don't know who my current ones are for Whitehall. I knew who the ones were in Mansfield because I became close with them, and my representative is now a senator, Senator Mark Romachuk, and he was in District 2 when I was living in Mansfield, and still sees over District 2. I think it might be District 2 or District 22. I think it's District 2. But yeah, it's the advocacy piece is so important. And
Hmm.
as far as, making sure that your clients get the best out of their day, that requires you caregivers getting back to you to stay off your phone and engage your client.
Yep.
What do you
Yep.
have to say about that? Let's talk about that a little bit.
I mean, that is huge pet peeve, right? Like, there is nothing worse than finding out that, a DSP is like, okay, I come in, I make sure they're good, and then I sit on the couch and I scroll Facebook on my phone, or I have conversations with somebody on the phone. That's even worse, I feel like. Um, and it's there's a balance, right? We're not going to completely keep people off their phones. It's 2025 technology. That's just the way technology is now. But we can put some things in place where it's like, hey,
Mhm.
that's not serving the person, right? Um, but again, I think that a lot of that comes back to DSPs. You have to, in my mind, there's a couple things. There's one, are they getting enough training? Because we both know that a lot of times they aren't.
Right.
A lot of times the training they get is to read somebody's ISP, and then they're just kind of put out in houses, and it's like, all right, good luck because you read their ISP, so you just must know how to work with them.
Yep.
Um, and even the people that are getting like that required training that DODD requires, that's great, but that feels to me very bare minimum. That feels to me like it's not enough. You're not teaching people how to build relationships with people. Um, you're not teaching people how to have conversations, communication, like those types of things, they're just not happening. So I always ask that first is, did the person get enough training? Now, we know, of course, in any field, not just this one, but any field, you're going to have some bad apples. You're going to have
Yeah.
some people that they're just not good. This is not the field for them. They shouldn't be here. They're not doing it. They're not going to ever do it well. And those are the people, too, that leaders have a responsibility to, I always used to say, coach up or coach out,
Yep.
right? So either you're going to improve and get better or you got to go. But again, sometimes we keep people too long. We keep people that we know are not good because we're short-staffed or leaders don't want to go work shifts themselves,
Yeah.
um, which I can understand. But at the same time, it's like, but you're sacrificing the quality of that person's life by keeping somebody there that you know is not good.
Right. Right. Well, I want to say this too. You know, if you're not prepared to work in all capacities, whether it be management, caregiving, you know, from wiping somebody's butt to doing accounting, if you're not prepared to do that, then don't even apply for this field. Because I
Yeah.
think what happens is, caregivers, they work their way up the field and
Mhm.
then they get out of that and then they forget who they were.
Yes.
And I'm the CEO now. I don't know, I drive a Cadillac Escalade. Is that too out of date?
No, I don't think so. I think Escalades are still pretty fancy cars, so.
Okay. Because we know nobody in caregiving is over here driving a Tesla. So,
Right, right.
so I wanted to say a car within reach. Cadillac Escalade. I don't know if Mercedes would be in reach, but hey. Um, I want to go back to kind of the first question I asked you because we've gone all over the place, but I think it kind of all tails together. You
Yeah.
talk about the caregivers being a puzzle piece, and that's
Yeah.
exactly, if they're treated that way, they're going to treat the client that way. What is some other things that you saw as a caregiver that you said, if I ever get in leadership, not on my watch?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that like the biggest things that I noticed as a caregiver and I've always gotten feedback about, they tend to revolve around two things for me. And one I kind of just touched on, which is training.
Right,
And the other is communication though. Um, we see that happen so many times where communication is just not flowing down to the DSP, right? Like team meetings happen or changes happen and the leadership finds out and they have that information, but it just doesn't get passed along effectively to DSPs.
Mhm.
And so then they're in the dark about what's going on. And in many cases, especially when I was a DSP, there were many times where like team meetings would happen or something like that. And, a lot of agencies, unfortunately, don't invite DSPs to team meetings. They don't invite DSPs to ISP meetings, which I think is a huge mistake because who knows the person better
Yeah.
than the people that are working with them every day, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you'll see concerns getting brought up, and then later on, you find out, well, if we had just asked so and so, they would have told us, oh, if you just asked me, I could have told you that. Yeah, we know that Nick does this when he's upset, and here's what we do as a result, but sometimes that stuff just doesn't flow down, and that can make DSPs feel like they're just not just the puzzle piece part, but they just feel like they're not part of the team.
Yeah. Well, it's really sad because in today's world, and I've been client for a long time, and there's been a shift between when I first started in 2012 to now. It's almost like today's DSPs just want the 9 to 5 and they want to go home and forget about it until the next day. And if you're a DSP that's worth your salt, you're not going to want to do that. You're going to realize that you can't do that. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, yeah, what say you?
That's a really tough one because I hear you. There are a lot of people that are like, "Hey, I want to work Monday through Friday, first shift." I get it. That's the ideal shift. That's kind of what our society unfortunately is based around. But I think that needs to be set up as an expectation ahead of time. And I think that there needs to be a lot more vetting in the interview process
Yeah.
and like when we're recruiting people to be DSPs. Like I don't just want to ask the basic questions that every job interview asks, like tell me about a time that you faced a difficult situation and how you solved it. Like, I don't necessarily, yeah, I would like to know that about somebody, but when I'm interviewing a DSP, I want to know how comfortable are you talking about topics like sex? How comfortable are you with personal care? How comfortable are you with working second shifts, third shifts, weekends, holidays? Because that's what the job calls for. And, you know, people have expectations, but they need to be told about those things before they're stepping into this job.
Yeah, they need to be told, look, listen, I know you want to work first shift and that's the only shift you want to work. But if that's the only shift that you're going to work, this position is not going to work out for you because you have to be willing in this field to work every shift because somebody may start in this job and then quit hours later. And if you've hired on and said, okay, I'm ready to go, but I only wanted to do first shift, well, then now there's a problem because the guy or the gal that said they were going to do first shift quit. And so now we need you to step in and do second shift or, whatever. I said that backwards, but
No, I got you. Yeah.
I think everybody got where I was going with. And also, the thing that really annoys me, Tiffany, is that I have never seen I've never seen people go into a field and say what they will and will not do as this field. Like
Yeah.
my primary caregiver, who's responsible for hiring my staff and other staff, has a problem finding people for me because they say, I don't want to do personal care. And I'm here to tell you that if you're going to do caregiving in any capacity, 90% chance you're going to end up doing personal care at some point. And God forbid, I hope somebody doesn't say that about you when you need the personal care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what does it say when you come into a situation and you're given the goal of like your job is to assist this person with their day-to-day life, and that can look different for a lot of people,
Right.
and it can look different day to day,
Yep.
but you're there to make their lives better. You're there to walk beside them so that they can do the things they want to do and they can live the life that they want to live. And, you know, I don't know how you can say that and then turn around and go, but you know what? I don't want to do personal care.
Yeah.
I don't think you can say both. And quite frankly, I have heard employees, that have said, I don't want to do personal care. And I'm like, then this isn't the position for you.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit and move people around to put you somewhere where you're not gonna do something because it's an inconvenience to you.
Yeah.
Somebody's life should not feel like they're inconveniencing you.
Yeah.
And that's so tough, but you really have to put your foot down with people like that and say, then this isn't the field. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Because even if you're just in a day program, or even if you're just in an outing,
Hmm.
what if you're with that person in an outing and all of a sudden they get violently ill and start throwing up everywhere and they can't control it? What
Yep.
are you going to do? Walk away and leave that person in their vomit? I for sure as hell hope not.
Right. And And when you say things like, I don't want to clean up after somebody, because I'm just paraphrasing here, that's essentially what you're saying. I
Yeah.
won't clean up after somebody, or I'm not going to clean up bodily fluids. That can also put a lot of shame on people. It can make people feel bad. Like, oh, I have this staff and they don't want to clean up after me. And you can make whatever assumptions that you're going to make about why they don't want to clean up after you. And that can really make people feel bad about themselves in the process.
Well, and a lot of people say this, well, you don't pay me enough to wipe somebody's butt. Well, let's ask this question. Is there really a price that you would take to wipe up somebody's butt? Because I can tell you right now, there's not a price for me.
Yeah, there's not.
It just, it's something that has to be done. This is why I say all the time, this is not just a job, it is a calling. And if you're not called to do this, sit on the bench, buttercup.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Be a water boy.
Right. That's where I'm at, is like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to tell you this, but this just isn't the job for you. Like, sorry, babe. Bye. I just can't. I can't work with people that are unwilling to do the things that are necessary to make sure somebody is taken care of. And those things are the bare minimum. Right? Those are the bare minimum things we talk about. Those are the check them off in the ISP.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're sitting out there saying, well, I just don't want to do personal care and I'm a caregiver and I don't do personal care in my job, okay, that's fine. But let me be clear and let us be clear on something. Unless you're tragically killed instantly, you will not get out of this life by needing personal care from somebody else
Yeah.
without needing personal care from somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, you always have to ask, well, what if it was you? What if it was me that needed personal care and I was given somebody to work with me and they're like, "Oh, but I don't want to do that." Like, how
Yeah.
would I feel then? You know? And that's empathy is a huge thing, and not just empathy, right? Like empathy, we use that term a lot. And people almost overuse the term empathy, but it's got to be more than just, hey, I can understand what you're going through. It's got to extend to compassion, where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, I can understand what you're going through and I want to help you so that you feel either better going through it or you don't have to go through it. Uh,
Yeah.
and if as a DSP, if I don't approach every situation that way, I'm gonna either help make it better for you or I'm going to help figure out how to make sure you don't have to go through it. Those are my two options when I'm providing care for somebody.
Yep. Yep. So, you know, over my time, Tiffany, and I'm sure you've heard this too, I've heard caregivers say to me, I've said, I need help with my computer.
Mm.
Can you help me with this because I'm legally blind or whatever? They've looked at me and said, well, that's not part of my job.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know it's not in the DSP, it's not in the ISP, but literally, if you're 24 hours with somebody, there's a reason you're there with them for 24 hours. There might be a lot that they can do on their own, but there also is a lot that they can't.
Hmm.
So, one of the things that irritates me as a client, don't come into my home and tell me you're not going to do something because it's not in your job description. There's a lot of this job that's not in your actual job description.
Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I would say that most things that a DSP does is not part of an official job description. Most of it probably falls under that very last line of a job description that says, and other duties as assigned. That's what you're doing most of the time. And I have problems with people that say things like that's not in my job description or I don't get paid enough to do that. First of all, because that tells me that you're not in this for the right reasons. Whether you get paid enough to do something or not, we all know that pay in the healthcare field specifically is not good. We get that, right?
Yeah,
And unfortunately, it's gotten better, but it's never going to be the pay of like corporations or big businesses. It's just not. And that's a lot of that is because America places their value on capitalism versus placing their value on taking care of people.
yeah,
So if you're looking to get paid and get a lot of money, this is not the field for you, because it's just not there. The money isn't there. But further, people that are like, hey, that's not in my job description. That's such a it's a cop out, right? Like that's such a cop out for actually providing caregiving type services to people.
yeah,
And I think it kind of goes back to the puzzle pieces that we were talking about because again, let's say that I was hiring somebody to be an administrative assistant for me, okay? And
yeah,
as an administrative assistant, they come in and they tell me that they don't know anything about computers. They don't know anything about how to work with computers. They don't know anything about Word or Outlook or whatever. I'm going to not hire them because I need them to be able to work with computers, right? And when we are so quick to just be like, you know what? I have a hole at Nick's house for second shift Tuesday through Friday, and I just need to fill it. That's where the
yeah,
puzzle piece comes in, and you just put somebody in there and you don't think to ask them about things like that. Hey, Nick is pretty technologically advanced. He does podcasts, he's got a TikTok, he's using his computer a lot. What do you know about technology? Is that something that you could potentially work with him on or help him with? And
yeah. And don't use the question, would you be willing to do it?
correct. It's because it's not about would you be willing to do it. It's if you work in this house, you're going to do it. I just need to know to what level you can do it.
Right.
Because again, if it's somebody that says that's not in my job description, or it's somebody that says I don't know anything about computers, I don't know anything about technology, then that's a huge glaring omission in the services that we're providing to you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like putting somebody in a house and the person is like, hey, I don't know, I really love to sing and I love to play musical instruments. And we're putting a caregiver in there who they don't even like to listen to music.
Right.
That to me is like, that's where we're just taking those puzzle pieces. Now
Yeah.
I'm not saying they have to know everything about everything, right? Because that's just impossible.
Right.
It's not going to happen. But at least some of those bigger things, let's try to get people in there that know how to do those things.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. You said something earlier in the taping about how sometimes agencies keep somebody too long.
Hmm.
And you've been on both sides of the aisle where you've hired and you've fired.
Yes.
So at what point does firing come in? What is a fireable offense in your opinion?
Sure. Well, I mean, there are obvious things that I think are immediately fireable, you know, if we're talking about abuse and um things
Don't even
like
get
that, you know. Well, one would think,
me. Yeah.
but I think that there needs to be a quicker, like, we need to hold people accountable. We need to hold people accountable earlier, and we need to hold them accountable faster. And
Yeah.
so, what I mean by earlier is like as soon as you notice somebody doing something that they shouldn't be, or maybe they're underperforming, you know, you've got to tell them right away. And that's where a lot of supervisors drop the ball because they either get too busy and they forget to talk to the person about that, or they are like, well, maybe it's not a big deal and I'll just see how they do. And then it becomes this ongoing issue. And now the person's been doing this same thing for like 6 months and you haven't said anything to them about it. And when you don't say something to somebody when they're doing something wrong, the issue becomes they think it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so that creates a lot of friction in different places because, like, for one, it's probably frustrating to the person getting services. You know, let's use the example we talked about earlier. Okay, this staff is always on their phone and they're not engaging,
Hmm.
right? And if we use that example and the supervisor over that house, they don't come to that person right away to tell them, hey, you're not doing enough engaging with the individual that you work with. Like, I get that you might need to be on your phone sometimes. That's cool, but you shouldn't be on your phone at the expense of this person getting the best services possible. So, if I'm a supervisor and I don't come out and tell that person that, and then they've been doing this for like 6 months now, well, now if I come out and tell them, hey, you really shouldn't be on your phone, they're going to be like, well, what the heck? Like, I've been on my phone this whole time and you haven't had a problem with it. But that also creates this huge ripple effect because the person that's getting services, well, they're getting more frustrated because they're like, why isn't, why isn't Tiff doing anything about this person? And they're just not helping me. And then you start to see other DSPs also get frustrated because they're like, well, why isn't this person being held accountable? I'm over here working my ass off, trying to do the best that I can. And, Joe comes in and all he has to do is sit on his phone all day, and nobody seems to be doing anything about that. So now you've got a whole group of people that are frustrated for different reasons, and your product starts to suffer.
Yeah.
This one person doing this thing that you just didn't talk to them about, now it's created this huge domino effect, and
Yeah.
everybody's pissed off. And so, like, in terms of like firing somebody for something, I think you hold somebody accountable right away. You say, Joe, you can't be on your phone as much as you're on your phone. You're not getting the services done, right? Maybe I give them a warning. Now I've set the tone. Joe's got to figure it out. If I come back a week later or 2 weeks later or whatever, and Joe's still getting on his phone all the time, okay, hey, Joe, I've talked to you about this. I've told you why it's important. Now I'm going to do, I need to do a written corrective action for this. And in my opinion, 3 strikes, you're out. So we've had the talk. We've had to write it up because you still haven't fixed it. And I know that you know what you're doing. And this is strike three. You're out. And that needs to happen quickly. That can't be dragged out 6 months because you're just not on top of it. You don't have time. I'm telling you right now, my advice to supervisors is the things that you say you don't have time for today are going to be the things that are going to create a lot of time issues for you down the road if you don't address them now.
And when you say 3 strikes, you're out, in my opinion, you're out does not mean we'll send you to another location.
No, correct. Because at that point, you have shown me that you're not actually interested in being a caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because and I give people opportunities because at first I'm like, well, maybe they didn't get trained right. Let me just double check that they know what they should and shouldn't do. Now, certain things you're gonna know, okay, I probably shouldn't be sitting on my phone on Facebook for 8 hours, right? But
Yeah.
let me give you the benefit of the doubt and let me just train you and talk to you about it and make sure you understand. But after that, now you're like actively saying to me, hey, I heard you and I know that this is not what I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't care and I'm going to do it anyways. And why would you want to keep people around like that?
Yeah. And that happens more often than not, especially in my situation, because I'm so high functioning. People get comfortable with me and they're like, wow, I thought we were friends. Why
Mm,
did you go to my boss and report me? Well, there's two very important reasons for that. Number one, you've made it clear that I'm not your boss, that I don't sign your paycheck. Caregivers love to tell me that. Uh,
I
Number
bet.
two, if I'm telling you, I'm usually afraid to confront people because I don't
Mm,
know what they're going to do to me. I don't know what their attitude is, you know?
yeah.
And so that's why I feel comfortable going to the boss. But let me say this, anytime your client goes to the boss, it's not always a report.
Yeah.
They're not reporting you, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They feel more comfortable talking to the boss because if you two are alone, chances are they don't know how you're going to react. And if you're comfortable with them and you think you're cool, you might just blow them off and say it's no big deal because that's happened to me.
Yeah. And I think that's so, so important for people to understand because ultimately, your your DSPs doing their job, that's you're not responsible for that, right? Like like you said, they like to joke that you're not the boss.
Or no, they'll say it flat out. You're
Yeah.
my boss. You don't sign my paycheck. In this instance, I'll just use my agency as uh, I'll put their name in it. I work for Rekindle Living. I don't work for you.
Yeah. Which
But
is
that's not
totally
true.
the wrong way of looking at it because they wouldn't have a job if you weren't in need of services.
Yeah. And I've been told, well, I can go find a better job. Okay. I've
Well,
gotten
then
to the
go.
point now where I'm like, okay, go ahead.
Right. Then go because obviously this isn't for you. And I know that sounds harsh, but these are people's lives. I don't have patience for people's lives. So if this is not where you want to be, please go find something different. Go find something that feeds you and fuels you because this ain't it.
Yeah.
But I think that like it's so important that not just DSPs, but provider agencies in general, they also need to be able to accept feedback, whether it's good or bad, right? And that's something that you're not going to grow and get better if you're only getting the good feedback. Like I need to know what's going on. And that's how I felt as an executive director. I need to know the things that are not going well. I love to hear about the things that are going well, don't get me wrong, because it makes me proud and it makes me happy that people are getting what they need. But what I really, really also want to know is what's not going well because I want to be able to fix it. And I can't fix it if I don't know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely true. And I think that I struggle as a high functioning client because a lot of caregivers are used to going in and having to guide their clients almost like a surrogate parent.
Mm-hmm.
And then I come in and I say, no, I want this, this, this. And they're like, Nick, no, but you have to go to bed at this time. And it says in your plan that you go to church. Why aren't you going to church? And well, first of all, if I decide not to go to church, the only thing you need to know is I decided not to go to church today.
100%.
Okay, that's it.
Yep.
Even if you joke, and I do have staff that joke and say, oh, you're a pagan, you don't go to church. Okay, I don't want to know that. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's just those type of things, and you are going to have those clients that are no never going to be happy, so you have to figure out a way to deal with that, because at the end of the day, if you were in that client's position, would you be the one bitching about my blanket's not folded right,
Mhm.
or you left the refrigerator door open? Now, of course, you being in your right mind would say, no, I wouldn't bitch about something that small.
Yeah.
But what if you weren't? In a lot of cases, you're dealing with people who don't have a full deck of cards, unfortunately, for whatever reason. And so you have to say to yourself, in a normal circumstance, this wouldn't be an issue, but this is not a normal circumstance. So I need to fold the blanket right. I need to make sure that the fridge to the door to the fridge is closed.
Yeah.
Just it's all about going above and beyond. And if you're not willing to go above and beyond as a caregiver, again, bye.
Yeah. Well, and it's like as a caregiver, I'm there to walk beside you. I'm not there to walk in front of you and control you. I'm not there to walk behind you and push you. Like, I'm there to walk beside you. And if I could instill like one thing in every DSP, it would be to understand that it's not about you.
Yeah.
Everything that I do as a DSP is nothing. It's nothing to do with me. It is not about me. It's not about what's convenient for me. It's not about what works for me. It's not about what I believe. It's not about what I want. It's not about what I need. It's none of those things. It does not apply to me. And that's one of the hardest things I think for DSPs to grasp. We think about, you're talking about basic stuff like, hey, Nick, if you don't want to go to bed, like that's your choice. You don't have to go to bed. And if you don't want to go to church in the morning because you went to bed at like 3 a.m. and now you're not waking up in time for church, like, okay, that's a consequence because that's just what happens. People live their lives and it happens, right? But I'm going to take it a step further. And this is where it gets a little uncomfortable for DSPs sometimes.
Yep. Go there.
I'm going to go there. And when I say it's not about you or what you believe or what you're okay with as a DSP, I'm talking about things like, I don't know, maybe the person that I'm working with, they want to go to the strip club, you know? Maybe the person that I'm working with, they want to go to the lion's den because they've been looking at different toys that they would like to potentially buy, and they want their staff to take them there and help them figure out which one is going to be the best for them.
Oh,
And
good. Have you been in my bedroom? Because
And
I literally just had this conversation with my staff the other day.
yeah, it's and I have unfortunately I have hired and fired people that have been like, "Well, I'm not comfortable taking somebody to a strip club." And I don't mean to sound harsh or cold, but it's not about whether you're comfortable taking somebody to a strip club. It's about, is that what they want to do
Right.
in their life? And you're going to take them. You know, I I was just talking to somebody about this earlier, and I'm gay, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not really straight passing. It's pretty obvious that I'm gay. And so there have been times where I've worked with people and they want to go to church, and the church that they attend does not approve of me for who I am, doesn't think that I am living a great life. They have issues with me just because I exist. And
Yeah.
it would be really easy for me to be like, you know what? I'm not taking this person to church because I'm uncomfortable there. And those are the types of things. That's where it gets tough. That's why I'm saying like it's goes deeper. And those are the things where I'm like, you know what though? That's the church that that person wants to go to. And if that's where they want to go, I'm going to take them. It's not like I have to participate while I'm there.
Yeah. And you don't. And you can very clearly say, I'm not gonna participate. I'm not gonna do this. But you still have to take the client. And in some cases, you have to stay with them. It's interesting that you brought up going to this strip club because I had another advocate along a few months ago say to me that he was talking to his case manager and they got into an argument because they said, Medicaid is not paying for you to go to the strip club. That's why I brought up the question earlier. What if Medicaid, because these are Medicaid waivers, what if
Yeah,
Medicaid starts to look at these situations and says, we're not going to pay for somebody to go to the strip club? But that funding is the only way they can get there.
right. And what I would say in response to that is, but Medicaid is paying for you to be able to live your life in the least restrictive way possible.
Right.
And if the least restrictive way possible is that you would like to frequent strip clubs, then that's you living your life,
Yeah.
right? And nobody's stopping anybody else from going to strip clubs.
Yeah.
Nobody's like, "Hey Tiff, I don't think that's a good use of your money to go to the strip club." Um, Not that I'm a strip club frequenter, but um, yeah, it's just I don't like I could see people and we've seen it, right? And I'm not trying to get super political, but
Go ahead. You're
a
more than
lot
welcome.
of a lot of times those are the same people that are like, "Hey, if you're getting SNAP food stamps, like you shouldn't be able to buy junk food." And
Yeah. Ooh.
I'm like, why? Because you want them to suffer more? Because you want them to look poor? You want them to not enjoy their life? Like, those are the types of things I think of when I think about, oh, well, maybe Medicaid is not the funding source to help you go to the strip club.
Well, let's talk about that for a second because that is a big thing right now.
Mhm.
And considering the fact that I only receive $63 a month from SNAP, please tell me what nutritious meal can you buy for $63 a month?
Right. Like, you could pay for maybe one meal for the month. You know what I mean? And
Exactly. I did that last month and my staff made lasagna.
yeah.
And I ate that for like 4 or 5 days and then threw it out and went back to fast food.
I mean, the at times the judgment can be pretty wild coming from people that they're not spending their money on healthy food, you know?
Yeah.
They're buying snacks, they're buying pop, they're buying whatever. And so I just don't think that it's my place to determine like what you should spend your food stamps on. I just want you to get the help. And if the help is going to be like, hey, my $63 goes a lot farther if I buy TV dinners and pop as opposed to buying the lasagna meal that you're talking about, that it took most of your money for one meal.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that we may have to buy TV dinners because our caregivers aren't trained on how to cook.
Oh, you're telling me. That's tough. Yeah, that's
And
tough.
even TV dinners, they can screw up.
Yeah. Well,
Trust,
and that's
yeah,
and part of that too is like I know that we can't ask caregivers to be everything, right? Like you can't come in there and know it all and know how to do everything. But in those situations, I think that it falls on provider agencies to do more.
yeah,
So if it's like, hey, I know that there are some staff that work here that don't know how to cook. Well, maybe I sit down with Nick and I say, hey, Nick, what are your favorite meals to make? And
yeah,
we write down the recipe and we give them the step by step instead of just saying, hey, well, I get that you can't cook, but like figure it out and do the best you can.
right. Well, a lot of problem with that is too, like my staff specifically in a lot of situation now, especially here in Columbus, my staff is 100% from another country.
Mhm.
So a lot of them, they don't like the American food. They don't know the culture. They don't know the American food, which that's something else we're going to get into about culture here in a little bit because I want to touch on that.
Yeah.
But and so 100% of my staff is African. So what do they know? They know jollof rice.
Hmm.
They know goat, and they know fufu.
Yeah.
That's a typical African's diet from my personal experience. And I can say from my personal experience because my staff talked to me about fufu at a nauseating point because
Yeah.
it's just something that they eat. They're like, "Do you know fufu? Do you know fufu?" And
Yeah.
I've never tried fufu. Not that I don't want to, but I've also been taught or told that African food is more expensive than American food because it's exotic.
Mhm.
So something has to give. And when you give $63 to somebody, that's not enough either to even, I mean, it's just crazy. It's nuts.
It it really is. I'll touch on the culture in a second, but like that's why it blows my mind that people out there think that there are people that are just like living to live off of food stamps and to live off of Social Security. Because I'm like, trust me, you can't live off of food stamps and you can't live off of
Yeah.
Social Security.
Unless you
People,
learn how to cheat the system, and there are people out there who do that.
you're going to have in every situation, you're going to have people that find loopholes. You're going to have people that cheat the system. But the majority of people are trying to do the right thing. And, the $800 a month that you get in SSI
Mhm.
and the $60 in food stamps, like that's not enough for anybody to live.
Nope. And then you're told on top of that you can't have anything over $2,000 in assets, or you risk losing everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It's a tough, it's really, again, these are the types of stories that I'm like, I don't think that people have the perspective. They don't know somebody who is getting those benefits,
yeah,
And so that makes all the difference. Now, as far as like culture goes, that's a big deal too, because we have so many different cultures, right? And we have so many different people that come from different parts of the world, and that is amazing. Like we love cultures and
yep.
we love diversity and we love people that are different. Like I love it. I love learning about people that come from different places than me because it's just cool. I also recognize that there can then be some challenges and some roadblocks for people who are getting care, who, they really need help understanding their own culture, or they really need help maybe working through socialization or social cues, and that might look different depending on the culture you're part of. And so, or like you said, where you've got people that they're great staff, but they, you know, the just because of where they come from and how they've grown up, like they're used to certain kinds of food and they don't really know how to make the food that you're wanting them to make.
Yeah.
And I think that that is where we really, as a whole, DODD and provider agencies, I think that we could really do a lot more. Like we're kind of missing the bar there on kind of bridging different cultures together and fixing those gaps and doing it in a way that like celebrates everybody, right? Celebrates the cultures that they've come from, but also celebrates like your culture and what's important to you and how you celebrate life, how you see life, because it's going to be different. And I think that we're kind of failing in that way. Um, I think some of it is because there are people that we serve that, you know, that might just be something that people have deemed not important to them. I'm mostly referring to people who they're nonverbal or they are, and I'm going to use this term, but I'm just using it because I think people will understand it better. They're lower functioning, right? And
Yeah.
so those types of folks, they're not really going to speak up about, hey, that their culture or what they are looking for, like you are speaking up for. And so
Right.
it's like, how do we fix that gap? How do we celebrate each other, respect where each other have come from and our differences, but also respect that, like, hey, we've got to also be able to do the things that you need.
Yeah. Well, you brought up something really important, which actually scares me. You brought up something that you said, well, maybe they don't care about it as much as far as culture because they're nonverbal. And that's when the culture that you're putting with somebody that's nonverbal is very important
Yeah.
because the person is nonverbal and they cannot speak for themselves. That caregiver has to have the responsibility of speaking up for them. And if they have too much of a broken English where they can't even understand what the doctor is saying about the client, they're like, "Excuse me, what?" Then
Yep.
that client runs the risk of not getting the care that he or she needs because the caregiver is not properly trained in the American culture. And I think DODD needs to do a better job. And I'm sure this is in other places too, because you've got places like LA, you've got places like Florida, you've got places like, I don't know, um, Boston, just places where it's a melting pot, Chicago. I mean,
Yep.
and so we've got to figure out as this as these United States of America, how do we train the caregivers who are foreigners and who are willing to do the job? Because I've had Americans come to me and say, Nick, I can't work for you anymore because if I do, they'll cut my Medicaid. The foreigners don't care about that. They want to work as much as they can, but they
Mhm.
can't be as efficient if they're not very efficient in their English speaking,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah,
if your client is nonverbal. That's a big issue.
it is. It is. And I just want to say, I'm by no means am I putting down anybody who's from a different country because some of the best caregivers I've ever worked with have been from somewhere other than the US.
Yep.
And so I definitely don't have any problem. I think that it's just making sure that we are addressing the culture gap or we're addressing the the social cues or issues that might come, with that. Um, there are some cultures, and I feel like I'm always bringing things back to sex, but here we are. There are, some cultures where they're just not comfortable talking about sex.
Yeah.
It's not part of what they talk about. It's not appropriate for them to talk about it. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way that they have been taught and the way that they live. But if you're somebody that's like, no, I need to talk about this because it's important to me, then how do we figure out the best way to set it up so that you are able to be heard,
Yeah.
but also like helping that person, that caregiver to understand, hey, this is a cultural difference than what you've experienced.
And hey, breaking news, you may be comfortable talking about sex within your culture or not within your culture, but for some reason, when people with disabilities want to talk about sex, able-bodied people freak out. They're like, "Oh my god, wait, you actually?"
They
And
really do. It's like they can't wrap their brain around the fact that like, hey, somebody with a disability might have sex. I hate to break it to you guys out in the
yeah,
audience, but people with disabilities want to have sex and they do have sex.
yeah, I'm a horn dog. Just let you
Right.
know. Hey, hi.
Listen.
I don't call myself Nicholas for nothing. Come find
Right.
Nicholas about it.
Sexy Nick over here. So, yeah. Yeah.
So I want to go in and talk about that too before we wrap things up. We may not wrap things up for a little bit, but I want to go in and talk about that too because you didn't essentially leave the field, but you started this coaching business. And I
Mhm.
just went through an 8 hour course with you, which was awesome. It was mostly awesome because there was food.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's always a perk.
And we talked about sex a lot.
Yes. We did. Yep.
Um, Primarily at my insistence because I kept bringing up stories. But we talked about the Lion's Den earlier. And for
Mhm.
those of you that don't know what the Lion's Den is, it's a sex store here in Columbus, which I'm still waiting to go to, by the way. Um, where does the boundary happen with caregivers? Like, say, okay, if I get a sex toy to help me pleasure myself,
Mhm.
um, what if a care what if a caregiver's like, ew, oh my God, I'm not cleaning that out? Or ew, oh my God, I'm not helping you put that on? Or, what? How do we deal with this?
That is one of the toughest conversations that I have had, to be honest, because I think that, it is valid for people to be like, wow, this is really uncomfortable to me. And it's okay for them to acknowledge that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's okay for you to be like, as a caregiver, to be like, hey, I don't know how I feel about helping put this in place for you, right? And I think that in terms of boundaries, the biggest thing with boundaries and like expectations is you have to talk about them and you have to have a lot of conversations about them. And that needs to happen with everybody, not just with like one caregiver. It's got to happen with everybody because you might have one caregiver who's like, you know what? I don't care. If you need me to pop a DVD in for you and put this next to your bed and you're good, like I'll do it, and there might be another caregiver that's like, ah, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. But we need to set from the start, hey, this is what I need,
Yeah.
you know? And the sooner that we can get that uncomfortableness out of the way,
Right.
the better. And a lot of times, the whole point of me giving this class, the entire point of setting this class up is because I recognized that a lot of these conversations aren't happening. People aren't talking about what are boundaries and how do I set them with somebody and what do I do if somebody crosses a boundary of mine? and we're not talking about consent. What does it mean? Yes or no? It's not just did they say yes or no, as we learned, you know?
Yeah.
And sex. What is sex? How does it happen? What's involved?
Yeah.
Be
Well, too, Tiffany, it's really hard for me.
hmm
That's why, because I've gone to counseling about boundaries and, all this type of stuff. And when you have somebody who has to be vulnerable to everything, from getting your ass wiped to people being down in your scrotum, making sure that you're clean down there. To me, once you do those things, the boundaries kind of go out the window. They've
hmm
been gone from the moment you took the first article of clothing off.
Sure have.
So, where I guess I'm still struggling, even from when we had that class, where at the point does the boundaries come in? Because these caregivers have to do these intimate details as far as brief
Mhm.
changes, showers, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I think that it needs to be how can we make it work for this person? And there might be times where that's going to be something that we just got to get past it being uncomfortable. I have worked with people who, once I put the DVD in for them and once I handed them the vibrator and turned the vibrator on, they were good to go, right? And I've worked with other people that, hey, maybe they wanted they wanted an inflatable, but they don't really have the use of their arms. So staff just have to put that in place for them. And once you put it in place, you're good to go. But I think that because it's so uncomfortable for staff to think about, because listen, most people aren't even comfortable talking about sex when it comes to themselves, let alone talking about it for anybody else.
Right?
But I think it's like you said, personal care, it's almost in that category,
Yeah,
right?
it is. So, say you turn a vibrator on for a client,
Mm-hmm.
they do it, they masturbate.
Mm-hmm.
Is that caregiver then responsible if they need help cleaning up from masturbating? Are they supposed to do that, in your opinion?
I would say yes. I would say if the team has discussed it and they've all talked about this is what we're doing, and understand that there's a difference between I just need you to help me with this and I am going to be inappropriate with this, right? So if I just need you to help me clean up after this has happened and it's like just part of the gig, cool. But if I'm like intentionally, maybe I'm doing something to make you uncomfortable in the process, that's a little bit of a different story. But a lot of this stuff, where that uncomfortable feeling comes in, is people are like, oh, well, I shouldn't be doing anything of a sexual nature. And it's like, you're not actually doing anything of a sexual nature. You're just putting the pieces in place where people need them.
Yeah, and I would say if a client gets to a point where they're asking you to help them do things of a sexual nature, then that's a different conversation. Because
Correct.
in that point, that would probably be one of the only things that are outside of your job description.
Yes. That's where I feel it's appropriate for you to say, hey, that's not in my job description and I don't get paid enough to do that. Um, and I think that that's a totally different topic. For the most part, people are just asking you like, "Hey, I want to have sex, but I have some roadblocks to be able to get there." You know? It's it would be the same as anything else we do in life. I want to eat dinner, but there are some roadblocks. Maybe I can't fully grab the spoon, right?
Yeah,
If I'm a staff and I come in and I help you grab the spoon, I'm not eating the food for you. I'm
right.
just helping you with this roadblock. And I think sex needs to be treated the same way because people want to have sex, whether they are what you consider able-bodied or normal or any of those things or not.
Yeah, yeah. And I really don't know. I don't understand it. You know, sex is a normal part of life, and disabled people want to have it, and we need to have it, and we deserve to have it. When we have people in our lives who are like, I'm not going to help you turn that toy on, or I'm not going to help you get into a position where you can do the act on
Mhm.
your own, then you're denying them. I don't know if I would say a right. I mean, would you say a right?
I honestly, I've thought about that a lot, and I kind of lean towards it's a right. I think it's a right for people to be able to experience sexual feelings in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, and I will say, I was on the Human Rights Committee in Richland County for 4 years, and we had to put. There was one particular case where a client was convinced that the staff lady who was pregnant was actually pregnant with his baby. And
Oh,
so they had to say, no, this is not. And I think they ended up actually removing the staff because it just got so controlled, they just didn't know what to do. But though there are those situations, but I think it would be fair to say that those situations are extremely rare, wouldn't it? I mean,
yeah, I would agree. And I just think that a lot of it has to start with we have to be willing to have the conversation. And we have to be willing to have the conversation more than once.
yep.
You know, it's got to be ongoing. As this person is like, hey, I think I want to explore sex and what that would look like for me and how I would want to do it. That's got to be a continuing conversation that you have. And like, it's got to include other things besides sex. That's why we talked about healthy boundaries, consent. What does it look like to have a good relationship versus a bad one? You know, that's stuff that I think everybody needs to learn. Um, but it's you just, the more conversations you have around it, the less taboo it becomes.
Well, and the thing is, the thing I want caregivers to take away from this today, Tiffany, is that in a lot of cases, caregiver, you are your client's safe space,
Yes.
and you should be your client's safe space. You know, one of the things that I talked about in the class is that Darius, who I've been working with for a year, um, I said in the class that as soon as he walks in my apartment, I know that everything is going to be okay. He
Yep.
and I can talk to him about anything. He's told me if you ever say anything that makes me uncomfortable, I'll gently let you know. You know, and we haven't gotten to that point in a year. Thank God, because that would just shatter me if we did.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a lot of jokes about, oh, they need a safe space. Well, your clients do, because in a lot of cases, you're the only family that they have.
Absolutely.
Their family doesn't give a flying crap.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said earlier, you might be coming in for a 12-hour shift and you might be the only human interaction that person gets all day,
Yeah,
you know? And that's why I'm always so I don't necessarily like to see it, people be like, "Well, I don't want to talk about that." You know, because it's like as a DSP, like that's what we should be there for. We
yeah.
should be a safe space, judgment free. You can tell me anything, you know, and I'm not going to judge you for it. And I'm not going to look at you differently. and I'm just here to help you in any way that I can. So whether you tell me something good or bad.
Yeah. And you know what? You can gauge whether or not you need to get an MUI done or whatever. You know, some clients are scared by that, other clients are not. But I mean, you don't even have to say because of what you just told me, I have to file an MUI. No, you you say, okay, thanks for sharing that with me. You know,
Yeah,
and go talk to your boss about it and say, look, I'm not mad, I'm not upset, but or even if you are mad or upset, you know, just say, hey, this client brought this up to me, but it made me really uncomfortable, but I didn't want to make them uncomfortable. How can we do this?
yeah,
You know, that's the way the conversation should go.
right.
One of the things that I also want to talk to you about because we talked about it in the pre-call was that how can we talk about money a lot,
Hmm.
but you know, if you give somebody 15, they're going to want 20. If you give somebody 20, they're going to want 30, and so on and so forth. How can we keep the A team caregivers coming back to the place instead of going for more promotion? Like my caregiver, Darius, he's a house manager
Hmm.
over several houses. And I just wish part of me wishes that I could have him 7 days a week, at least for one shift. But I can't because he's good and they
Yep.
know he's good. So that's why he's a house manager.
Yep.
And then I'm stuck over here with B, C, and D who don't want to do their job half the time. Now, thankfully, I don't have that in my staff now, but I know there are a lot of those people who do. So
Yeah.
what can we put in place to keep A plus caregivers and say, you know, yeah, I would like a little bit more money. It would be great, but my clients love me and I love them. So I'm going to stay here.
Yeah. I think that that's such a it's a tough situation because like you said, people are always going to want more money, right? We all do. It's part of life. We could be getting paid a certain amount and we'd be like, you know what would make me happier if I got paid a little bit more. Like we just all do. And at the
But
same,
Judge Judy and you make 47 million a year.
you know, I
But
mean,
even then, she raises her contract every 4 years. So
yeah. But I think that like you have to look at the why behind people asking for more money too, because I think that it's not, some of it is, hey, I got to be able to pay my bills, right?
yeah,
But I also think that, hey, I think I should be paid more comes from a place of I recognize that I'm doing an amazing job here and I value myself enough to ask you to value me. So it's the real question, I think, Nick, if we're pulling money out of the equation, the real question is how do we acknowledge the value of the people that are working as caregivers? And I think that a lot of research shows that people are not always motivated by money. A lot of times people might be motivated by growth and development. They might be motivated by different responsibilities. They might be motivated by having appreciation shown in different ways. I think that like the way you're going to keep your A players in the caregiving positions is you have to make the position valuable.
yeah,
You have to make the position important. It is. We know it's important, right? Like we've been talking this whole
yeah,
podcast that we know it's important. But how do we get people to see that and recognize that?
yeah,
And I think that the other thing about like promoting people, right? And putting them in different roles. And I'm not saying this is always the case. It's not. It's different for everybody. But sometimes it's like, oh, this person wants more money. The only way for me to logically give them more money is to put them in a higher position. When In reality, what they're really good at is being a DSP. And then you put them in a manager role and they're not great. Um, and it's not because they're a bad employee, it's just because you pulled them out of what they were really excelling at and doing well because they wanted more money or they wanted more recognition or whatever. Um, I think that if you had maybe a tiered system for DSPs, where you have certain levels, and those levels, maybe they come with different amounts of skills training or education or certifications or whatever, right? Like if you think about nurses, let's talk about nurses for a second. You've got like your regular nurses, right? And then you've got like a registered nurse who's still a nurse. It's just that they have a little bit more responsibility. They can do a few more things. Then you've got like your licensed nurse practitioner who, again, they're still a nurse, but they've got more certifications, they've got more education. So, what if we were able to do something like that with DSPs?
Yeah.
I know that the state has their longevity, like their 60-hour add-on that gives people a little bit more money, but I think that that almost feels like it's just not, it's missing the point, is what
Right.
it almost feels like.
Yeah. And it kind of is. And you know what? Appreciation for your DSPs can go as far as leadership. You know what? I'm going to surprise you at your location today. And you know what? I'm giving you the rest of the day off.
Yes.
And I'm going to do your job. I
Hmm.
know this wasn't planned. You know, you might want to make sure that that client that you're going to take over for doesn't have something special planned with that DSPs, which brings back communication is important. But, you know, it might be something simple as I'm going to work the rest of your shift today. I'm going to give you a break because you're awesome. So, or it might just be find out what your caregiver's favorite food is and just say, hey, I brought you a donut and a coffee this morning, or whatever it is to keep them, you know, saying it may not be more money, but they gave me the rest of the day off. You know, I've never had an employer do that. You know, they see me. Just simple things like that, I think, would help keep the A players in the field.
Yeah. I think showing appreciation for people and like being kind to people really goes a long way. Um, and like you said, the appreciation, it needs to be more specific, right? It can't just be like, hey, thanks, I appreciate you. Like that might sound good the first time I say it to you, but when I've said it to you 20 times
Well,
and
I
I
don't know
haven't,
like that. Hey, hey,
well, you
you're
know,
great.
you're great. But if I'm not specific about what it is that I appreciate about you, and it could be because as a manager, maybe I don't know. Maybe I haven't taken time to get to know you, so I don't know. But
Yeah,
there could be other things too that, yeah, like I love the idea of showing up and being like, hey, you're going to get paid for this 8-hour shift, but I'm going to work it. You
yeah,
know, I think that's great. I think that, like, I also think that, again, seeing people's values, what do they bring to the table? What are their strengths? And using them. I had some DSPs in the last company when I was an executive director that they would be like, "Oh, hey, if you ever need help, um I'm really good with editing videos and creating video content." And I was like, "Holy cow. Like, yeah, I would love for you to help make video content." So it's like, are we finding the things that also people help with, like I don't know if somebody was like, "Hey, I'm really good at producing podcasts." And if we never found that out about them, then we might not utilize that skill. Or if we didn't care enough to find out about that skill, then we wouldn't utilize it.
Yeah, and you know what? I would encourage as many, you just said that and it set it off in my head. I would encourage as many home health care agencies to start podcasts
Oh, absolutely.
to talk about the struggles
Yeah.
because, these politicians, you know, the president, love him or hate him, but a lot of people say the reason he won is because he went on podcast. And, you know, that's a way a lot of people get their news now. So if we have a lot of home health care agencies all over this country say, these are the good things we do, these are the things that we struggle with because of funding, and that gets to the right people, you could create major change for the good. So yeah, start that agency podcast.
Yeah, I mean it would make a huge difference and I think that because first of all, we're provider agencies, right? Like we're there to provide the best services we can. And so we don't necessarily think about other things. But at the same time, it's like I think that the use of technology, I know that the state is like, hey, assistive technology is the way to go. But I'm like, we're really, really missing the goal on it though,
Yeah,
because like w- we need things to be out there. We need podcasts. We need, people. There are so many people. If you asked 100 people on the street and you said, hey, what does a direct support professional do? Like, how many of them do you think would actually know?
it would be like, first of all, what the hell is a direct support professional?
Right. It'd be like a direct support professional of what? Right? Like they wouldn't know. They wouldn't
Yeah,
know. And so we're really doing a huge disservice again to the people we serve, to agencies, to everybody by not talking more. Social media needs to be utilized more. There needs to be more marketing. It's just you've got to get it out there.
I want to ask you one more thing about money before we wrap up.
Hmm.
Do you think it is because there's a lot of big agencies out there? I mean, they've got the moolah. Okay.
Hmm.
In fact, I'm going to speak for one of them in October, but I'll leave the name out of it for now. But there's a lot of agencies that got the moolah.
Yeah.
Do you think it is solely the state's responsibility to raise the fund, to raise the money, the wage of the caregiver? Or if the agency has the money to do so, should that come out of the agency's pocket?
I think that agencies, they, again, you're given a budget, right? We already talked about that with people's level of care. It's the same for a provider agency. You know the budget ahead of time that you're going to get. And it's up to you to determine how you're going to use that budget. And so there are some agencies that I've seen that they are able to pay people more because they have very little overhead, right? Like they're not paying for
Yeah.
huge buildings, they're not paying for a ton of vehicles. They're, it's stuff that you have to think about. What kind of equipment are you purchasing? What kind of vehicles are you using? What kind of location are you having your day program at? Does everybody in your company need, an Apple MacBook that costs
Yeah.
$2,500 when there are laptops out there that will do the job for 300?
Yeah. And believe me, we're both Apple fans,
We
but
are. This is not a knock on Apple because I'm literally talking to you from a MacBook right now as we speak.
you
Um,
do. Yeah.
but it's things like that that you really think about. And it's also like, how much are you paying people? How many positions do you have in your company that are not tied directly to billing? So they're really just an extra expense. And that's where it might be like we talked about how can we get A player DSPs to stay in their roles? Well, what if some of these administrative positions, we just paid those DSPs a little bit more and we gave them a few more responsibilities? I'm not saying a ton. Don't don't overload them to the point that they can't do what they're there to do, which is provide good service.
Right.
But there could be some things that you don't necessarily need administrative staff to do, right?
Yeah.
So, do we pay this extra person $55,000 a year to do compliance, for example? Or do we pay a little more for, and I talked about these different levels of DSPs, do we pay a little more for a DSP who's going to look at documentation once a week and make sure that it's in compliance?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think the frustration with a lot of caregivers is, especially if you go to these big agencies, number one, they never see their leadership. And when
Mhm.
they do see the leadership, they're the ones that have the nice cars. They're the
Yep.
ones that have the nice house. They're the ones that don't have to live paycheck to paycheck anymore.
Correct.
And I think the caregivers are like, share the wealth, or I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah. I
You,
mean,
you, you
the
can't tell me you don't have it when I look at the car you drive.
yeah, the profits are definitely there. This is not by any means a field that you can't make money. Now, I'm just saying you're not going to make like corporate money, but you can make money. Absolutely. And yeah, you can tell. You can tell when certain people are out of touch. They have the nice cars, they have the nice houses, they are buying the nice equipment. They are paying for things that, they seem a little frivolous and they seem like we could be taking these profits and throwing it back into the people that we work with. Um,
Especially like getting handicapped vans if you needed to take your clients around.
mhm.
Those aren't cheap. And I know because I've tried raising money for one for 3 years and I don't even have half of it,
Yeah,
which is why we're turning it into public speaking and all and paying for this podcast so that because my goal is, and this scares a lot of people when I say this, my goal is to get off the system completely because I'm just going to be quite frank with you as a client. The system doesn't care.
no,
The government wants to keep people like me broke. And so that's why I'm doing this podcast, not only to bring people with disabilities from back to the front, but to give me wealth, to give me the life that I believe I deserve to have because I've had 2 different states and 3 different counties. I've worked with several different voc rehab facilities, and they've told me, uh, Nick, we see nothing that you can offer an employer. So that's why I'm here. I'm doing this on my own, and I know that's a rabbit trail, but I mean, so agencies could take a little bit of that extra money and maybe hire your clients to answer the phone somewhere so they can get a little piece of the pie too. I mean,
yeah,
it's just there's all these ideas and things that we could do to make lives better for caregivers, but all we do is talk about it and we never put them in fruition. And we could do that for clients too. But the
yeah,
thing is, it takes money and resources. And
it
a
does.
lot of these agencies have the money, but the leadership is too busy living in their comfortable cars and their nice houses.
Yep. Living that extravagant life. And that just makes it look even worse when the people around you are struggling to pay their bills,
Yeah.
you
Yep.
know? So I think we either have to be serious about it or we don't. We're either serious that we want everybody to have the American dream, and I'm quotating that because that's a topic for another day. But we either want people to have that, the ability to have that, or we don't. And that includes people with disabilities. And it's, am I willing to work with you, Nick, to see you be 100% successful? And like you said, living a life that you're not on the system, you're not in the system, and you're living the life that is fully what you want.
Yeah.
Do I genuinely want that for you or do I not?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Oh, this has been such a meaty conversation, and people are like,
Yes, we got some good stuff in there. There was
we
some good
did.
information.
We did. What would you say before we wrap up this episode of the podcast? What would you say to the caregiver that's like, uh, I've been in this for 15 years and I'm just about done. I don't know if I can do it another day. What would you say to them? Because you've been on both sides of the spectrum. So
Mhm.
whether you're talking to the director or talking to a caregiver, what would you say?
I would say to a caregiver that I do understand because burnout is tough and burnout is even tougher when you're in a field where you've got to do a lot of things, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally. But my thing is, remember your why. Remember why you got in this field or why you enjoy doing it. Remember why you find it rewarding. Take breaks if you need to. Rest. We all need to rest. We'll have to talk about overworking DSPs another day,
Oh,
but
yeah,
because provider agencies do that too. Um, but rest and remember what brought you here and what keeps you here because sometimes you just need to remember those little things that fill your cup, and then do the other things outside of caregiving that also fill your cup so
yeah,
that you can continue to work and feel that joy and not feel that burnout. But burnout does happen. And when it happens, be honest about it. Be honest about how you feel. Take the breaks, get rest, and start to remember your whys and who you are and what you do.
yeah. What about from the director side of it?
Directors, if you're recognizing, you need to check in with DSPs often. Check in with them all the time. And when I say check in with DSPs, I don't mean, "Hey, how you doing?" Because what do we usually answer when somebody says that to us?
Fine.
Fine. Cool. Do you need anything? What do we usually answer when somebody says that to us?
No.
No, I'm good. Right? That's not a check-in. And if you're doing that, you are not checking in with anybody. You've got to really ask, and you've got to get to know your DSPs just as well as you get to know people we provide services to. Although I will say some directors don't really know the people they provide services to either.
Yeah. Nope. I've had that.
But you've got to be able to know what drives your DSPs. You got to be able to know what motivates them. You have to know what's baseline for them so that you can recognize when they're not in a good space because they're not always going to tell you. Um, that's because of society. We've built a society where people are afraid to say that they're tired. They're afraid to say that they don't think they can do it. They're afraid to say they're burnt out because they don't want to get fired. So if people aren't going to willingly offer that information to you as a director, it's your job to go seek it out. And that would be what I would say to a director. Check in often and make sure you're checking in a way that's actually productive.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say to directors, this is what I would say to directors. Guess what? Breaking news, Fox News Alert, CNN, wherever you get your news from. Your shit stinks too.
Yup. Yeah, we could probably devote an entire episode to like leaders that don't take accountability for their actions and
Oh,
won't
we
admit
could,
that
and
they're
you'll be
wrong.
back. But yeah, we could turn this into a 3 hour Joe Rogan if we wanted to, but
Oh,
we
we
won't
could.
do that tonight. But or today we're filming this on a Monday, okay? But it drops on Tuesdays. Um, but yeah, that's what I would say to directors is that your shit don't stink. Your shit does stink.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that you've moved up the chain. It stinks even more because now you're making decisions that are affecting your DSPs, but because you're the director and you make the money, you don't care anymore. But if you were back where they are, you would be like, what the hell is going on? You know?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, your shit does stink. And what I would say to the caregiver, listen, I know you get burnout and I know what happens. I get it. But keep this in mind when you want to walk away. And this is not a guilt trip, this is legit. Your clients that have a disability would love to get up and forget about their disability for a week,
Yep.
but they can't. I'm not telling you to not take a week off. I'm telling you, don't just think about yourself. Well, I'm not making enough money. Well, they don't treat me right. And it's horrible that they don't treat you right.
Yeah.
Who's going to treat that client right, especially if you're the only one, or maybe there's two of you that treat the client right? So, what if you decide to up and leave? So
Yeah.
somebody's got to fight for the client, and it has to be you at some point. And don't be afraid to buck the system
Never be afraid to.
and keep going because you know what? If you get in trouble for bucking the system, caregiver or state agency representative, you come on this podcast because this is why I do it. And we'll
Yep.
buck the system together.
Yeah. Let's talk about it, like don't be afraid to stand up. Speak out for you, speak out for the people you serve.
Well, I'm not afraid to stand up. I just can't do it. But anyway,
Wow. You know what? I walked right into that one.
you did.
Mhm.
You did. Well, this has been so much fun, Miss Bowen.
So much. Yes. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. And you're going to stay right there because we're going to have a quick conversation off camera. Well, not off camera, but not recorded, obviously.
Where we're going to talk about secret stuff.
Yes. Secret stuff like conspiracy theories. Like,
Yes.
is that really Trump running the White House?
Right. And like who killed JFK? We need to know.
Yes. And is COVID really from China?
I, that's another episode for another day.
Yes. Yes, it is. That was all satire. Anyway,
Yes.
um, thank you guys for joining me on this episode of Nick Speaks, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. Remember to check out the book that I told you about earlier, Trailblazing and Transforming Entrepreneurial Stories of People with Disabilities, link in bio. My GoFundMe is also in my bio. If you guys could donate to that, that would be fantastic. All of Tiffany's information will be in the bio. So be sure to check out everything you need to know about her or everything you want to know. You may not need to know it, but everything you want to know about her, check that out. We'll have it all in the bio for you. And we will see you next Tuesday on the Nick Speaks podcast. Bye bye, everybody.
Woo-hoo. Bye.